MTG Arena announcement, October 27th. Oh boy, we got some trouble brewing in Historic today. So Arena team announced an upcoming Alchemy rebalances that will go live tomorrow, October 28th. Now, as you know, if a digital card gets rebalanced, such as Alchemy specific cards that don't exist in paper, we do not get any wildcard refunds back. And if a card gets rebalanced in Alchemy format, Historic also gets affected. I don't know why, but it does. And honestly, timing could not have been any better, or even worse for some folks. So as you know, Standard is flourishing at the moment with all the VV Cauldron decks. And even just looking at the recent tournament, you can see that it is very balanced, especially around VV Cauldron decks. So what better way to attract some Standard folks over to Alchemy by nerfing some of the most unwanted cards in Standard? And to top it off, if you don't know, there is a Historic Qualifier going on at the moment, so even better timing. Nerfing some of the cards during Qualifier so that some people's decks become way worse than it was. And that's exactly what's happening here. So Best of 1 Qualifier play-in happened last weekend, and I actually happened to play in it, and I was also able to see some of the decks that people are playing, which had some quote-unquote to be balanced in the future cards in it, because I was not going to be able to make it to the Best of 3 play-in, which will be starting October 31st. And there is also going to be another qualifier after that in November. Well, it sucks for anyone who is going to be participating in this upcoming qualifiers because cards are being rebalanced. So what are some cards that are being rebalanced tomorrow? So I will note before we start that most of these cards are balanced due to Alchemy reasons. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the patch notes. First, we got Waystone's Guidance. Now, I don't play Alchemy, but I do know that the Mobilize deck is an archetype that is very powerful in Alchemy. However, it is not played in Historic at all. So we got Waystone's Guidance. And we also have Mardu Thunderkite. Both of these cards have been nerfed from Mobilize 1 to Mobilize 2, which will not be affecting Historic metagame at all, which is good. So I think we're just going to be going over these to the next card, which will actually be relevant in Historic. So Swiftster's Teaching. This is one of the better cards that came out from Alchemy recently. All the reasoning for the nerfs here is because of the Alchemy here. They note that it is to power down the VV Prowess deck in Alchemy format, but obviously it's going to affect Historic, especially for the qualifier, because one of the best decks in Historic format at the moment is Wizards. By nerfing this, it is directly nerfing one of the tier 1 decks in Historic format, especially impacting the upcoming qualifier, which is definitely not good. So what happened with it? Well, it used to give both the Prowess and Haste when you cast this card, but now it only gives you a choice between a Prowess or Haste. So why this was really powerful in Historic Wizards is because you can haste in things like Dreadhorde Arcanist, which is really good because you can attack immediately, letting you, get back another Swiftster's Teaching. Or you can even flashback something like a Flammable Noir from the graveyard or Expressive Iteration, because now the Dreadhorde Arcanist has Prowess, you can get those cards back as well. And not just Dreadhorde Arcanist, just giving a haste to Symmetry Sage is also a lot of damage, and even giving it to something like a Soulscar Mage, that is going to give it double prowess and haste. So Wizard in Historic is actually going to be losing quite a bit of power because of this. And this was one of the premier aggro decks in Historic format that is also able to beat something like an Eldrazi because of how fast the deck was. So this is actually going to shift the metagame a little bit, even though mostly, the format is being dominated by Eldrazi at the moment. So this is definitely not a good look for Historic. Now, the reason for the Swiftster's Teaching getting nerfed in Alchemy format is because of the VV Sins. You see that now, instead of the activated ability of the VV here for 0 mana, you actually have to tap this card. So you can't just haste the VV in with the Swiftster's Teaching and then play a bunch of cards into generating more mana, into growing the VV even further, into attacking on a single turn. So the actual balance in itself for the Alchemy is actually pretty smart. The identity is still there, it's just that you can't really pair it up with Swiftster's Teaching, you can't attack with it. Now going back to Swiftster's Teaching, now you have to choose between prowess or haste. And this is especially bad because it is a one-time boon. If you don't have creature in hand, you don't know what the best choice is going to be, right? And that's really bad because, especially if you don't have a creature in hand, by the time you draw the creature, the board state could be a lot different where haste isn't very effective. Maybe you want the prowess. Depending on the board state, prowess might be better. On the bright side, if you cast the teaching twice before you cast a creature, you can get the benefit of both prowess and haste. But before, you could get double prowess and haste, which was a lot more powerful. So definitely very unfortunate, in my opinion. I do think Wizard will still be really good, since they have been getting some really good cards such as Ponder, Chain Lightning, things like that. But without Dreadhorde Arcanist having haste, things like that, they might actually have to pivot towards a different card that gives you haste, such as Reckless Charge. But good chance people might still use the rebalanced version, just because it's still a pretty good card, in my opinion. But definitely a huge nerf to the clock, to how fast the wizard can kill you, in my opinion. So this is very unfortunate because a lot of people probably prepared the qualifier with the wizard deck. And I have also seen some folks in the best of 1 qualifier playing the wizard deck. And when I play best of 3 in historic, I do actually see wizard decks a lot. So this is definitely pretty bad for historic, especially the qualifier. Now, as for Timeless, I rarely see this card in Timeless. It is an incredible card, but obviously the prowess archetype isn't known to be very strong in Timeless format. So it's not that relevant for Timeless, but it is kind of still sad that it is getting nerfed. So we'll probably see less of this card in Timeless format, but even just giving it haste is actually, I don't think it's too bad, in my opinion. And next up, we got Fountain Port Charmer. This was Offspring 1 before, but now it's Offspring 2. I do recall this was briefly played in Historic Creature combo deck, but it's definitely not going to be like too relevant for Historic, even if it got nerfed. I don't think I see this card anymore, so there we go. And we got some minor buffs to some underused cards, such as Network Marauder. Now it's a 1/3. You see a Stoic Star Captain, and you have Candela. Now it's a 3/3 instead of a 2/3. Like I said, just very minor buffs. And then you see a enchantment, making it cost nothing to sacrifice this enchantment when you have the max speed. And Lurker in the Deep. This is a card that I briefly played in Historic. Now it's Impending 3 instead of Impending 4, which is pretty good. Although Impending 3 is still a lot of the times you just kind of want to blink this card, but obviously a buff, so I quite like it. Jokai. This now becomes a 2/4 instead of a 2/3. Now, funny thing is, this used to be 2 colors when it was first revealed. And people are saying, hey, this is actually insane for a 2-mana card. And it is a color, I believe. And people are like, maybe we can play this in Timeless format. Something like a Jeskai energy, because you can blink things like a Johnny, things like that. But, well, it was revealed that before release, this got changed to, Jeskai color, which was very unfortunate because I do think this had some potential, seeing some play in Timeless format. Being a 3-mana card for a 2/3 was just not good enough. Even 3-mana 2/4 is still not going to be good enough for Timeless format. Even in Historic format, I believe, I don't think this is still good enough in Historic format. So, moving on. And now we get to the meat. The Meathook Massacre and Fires of Invention reverted to the original form in Historic format. So let's see what they say. We've started looking into cards that were adjusted for reasons that are no longer relevant and reverting them to match their tabletop counterparts. The Meathook Massacre and Fires of Invention were cards that were too impactful for past versions of Historic, but the current format can support them. These changes will also impact Brawl. So all things considered, this is actually a very good change and a very good news for the future of Historic when it comes to all the nerfed cards. There are some cards that are nerfed for an inexplicable reason, such as Teferi, shouldn't have been nerfed. And we also have things like Omnath. Why is Omnath still nerfed to a 5-mana card? Doesn't really make sense. I also think Minxian Boo can come back to a 4-mana card. So there's definitely quite a bit of cards that are nerfed at the moment that should be looked at again and then reverted back to the original. Because let's be honest, we're living in a format with Eldrazi dominating the format. And what's a Meathook Massacre gonna do? Nothing. Nothing, honestly. So yeah, that is basically today's announcement from MTG Arena. If you're waiting for the Eldrazi nerf or potential bans for Historic, there is a ban announcement scheduled for November 10th. I believe this is the date they are waiting for because this is also the date after the qualifier is over, which is November 2nd. So we might actually see some bans for Historic or potential nerfs. Recently, Wizards of the Coast has been a little bit vigilant about nerfing paper cards. I mean, although they did just nerf a paper card here, which is VV, but they've also stated that they don't want to touch an iconic card. VV is a very new card, right? If they were to touch something like a Eldrazi Temple, which is very iconic for Eldrazi in older formats, there is a good chance it could just get straight up banned instead of getting nerfed. So we might see some wildcard refunds for that. And there's also potential that Sowing Micro Spawn could also get touched. Either that or the Kha'Zix Command. And the Kha'Zix Command and both the Micro Spawn are both recent cards. So chances are they could be rebalanced. I'm not sure about the bans, but if you're thinking of crafting Eldrazi decks in Historic, I suggest you wait until November 10th, like I said. It's just very unfortunate that Wizard archetype got actually hit as a result of Alchemy. Sorry for anybody who has practiced with Wizard decks for the qualifier. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here. So I will probably be back tomorrow. There may be a video tomorrow, very late. Not my usual schedule because the new cube cards are gonna be coming out tomorrow. So I may make a video and rush it out in the evening. So we'll see.